You never truly notice the weight of a presence until it disappears. You never realize how warm a voice was until silence becomes its replacement. And you never understand the value of a moment until it becomes a memory sharpened by regret. People rarely respect what they have. They respect what they can no longer reach. Carl Jung believed that most individuals drift through life in a half-dream, lulled by routine, hypnotized by familiarity, convinced that what matters will remain within arm's reach. You assume the people you love will always answer the phone. You assume opportunities will circle back. You assume time will wait patiently for you to grow into the person you were meant to become. But the unconscious plays a cruel trick. It hides the value of everything important until loss makes the truth unavoidable. Think of the friend whose absence you only felt once their name stopped lighting up your screen. Think of the partner you took for granted until the door closed for the final time. Think of the younger version of yourself, the one you abandoned so casually, believing you could return to them whenever you wanted. Loss doesn't just remove something from your life. Loss reveals something within you, something you were too distracted, too comfortable, too unconscious to see. This isn't a lesson about grief. It's a lesson about awakening. And now the question rises like a blade at your throat. Why do you wait for loss to teach you the value of what you had? There is a quiet lie the human heart learns long before it learns love. Whatever stays long enough begins to feel permanent. You don't choose to believe this. It simply settles into you like dust collecting on a shelf. The familiar becomes invisible. The consistent becomes ordinary. The things you once reached for with trembling hands eventually feel like background noise. Jung believed this was not stupidity or cruelty. It was psychology. The psyche cannot afford to feel the full weight of its blessings every single day. If you truly understood the depth of what you have while you still have it, the awareness would break you. It would overwhelm you. It would force you into a kind of sincerity most people aren't ready for. So the unconscious numbs you instead. It turns miracles into routine. It turns irreplaceable people into predictable presences. It turns fleeting moments into things you think you can revisit. Think of someone you once saw every day. A parent humming in the kitchen. A friend sending the first message. A partner always forgiving your impatience. A sibling who never said they loved you, but showed it in 100 invisible ways. At the time, it didn't feel special. It felt normal, because normality is the illusion that blinds us. Now imagine one small shift in the universe. The kitchen grows quiet, the phone stays dark, the forgiveness never arrives. Suddenly, what you once walked past without noticing becomes a memory. You cling to with shaking hands, you replay it. You dissect it. You ache for the version of you who lived through that moment and didn't know it was a blessing. This is what Jung meant by the collapse of projection, the moment when the bubble of unconsciousness bursts, and you see clearly what your comfort once made blurry. The truth is simple. You didn't think they would leave. You didn't think life could change that quickly. You didn't think normal had an expiration date. So you treated the extraordinary like it was ordinary. You treated the temporary like it was eternal. But here is the part no one wants to admit. Your mind was trying to protect you. If you woke up every day with full awareness of how fragile everything is, you would collapse under the weight of gratitude and fear. You would cling too tightly. You would break your own heart with intensity, so the psyche softens the edges. It dulls the colors. It hides the truth, but the same mechanism that shelters you also sets you up for devastation. Loss doesn't hurt because something disappears. It hurts because you see, for the first time, what you never allowed yourself to fully feel while it was here. You realize how distracted you were, how often you chose comfort over presence, how easily you let your days slip by under the illusion of later. You realize that the moments you want back are the moments you barely lived in, but beneath this pattern lies something darker, something Jung hinted at repeatedly. Maybe you treat your blessings as temporary because deep down, you don't believe you deserve anything permanent. The illusion of permanence is not just a psychological trick. It is a shadow, a wound. It comes from the part of you that believes stability is borrowed, not earned. That love is conditional. That good things are fragile because you are fragile. So you distance yourself from what you value. You disrespect what you care about. You rush through what is meaningful. You sleepwalk through the very story you'll one day ache to return to, not out of malice, but out of fear. The illusion of permanence doesn't just make you careless. It exposes how terrified you are of losing what truly matters, and how unprepared you are to hold it while it's still yours. People like to believe they lose what they love because of circumstances, bad timing, bad luck, someone else's choices, the universe conspiring against them. It's comforting to blame the external world. It lets you avoid the truth Jung warned about. Most losses begin inside you, long before they appear outside you, because the part of you that ruins the things you love most is not the conscious part. It's the shadow. The shadow is not darkness. It is the unacknowledged, the fears you hide, the insecurities you bury, the self-doubt you disguise behind politeness, humor, or distance. The whisper inside you that says, "You're not enough, don't trust this. Don't trust yourself." And here is the quiet tragedy. The shadow sabotages what the conscious mind cherishes. Think of a time you pushed someone away without meaning to. You told yourself you were tired. You told yourself they weren't giving enough. You told yourself they were the problem. But what if the real problem was the fear that they might see you too clearly? What if your coldness wasn't anger, but self-protection? What if your silence wasn't indifference, but shame? What if your distance wasn't rejection, but the belief that you weren't worthy of being held closely? Jung believed that every person carries an inner script written long before adulthood. Don't let them get too close. Don't let them see your flaws. Don't need anyone, it's safer. So when someone finally arrives who could matter, the shadow reacts like a wounded animal cornered in the dark. It pushes, it hides, it attacks, it retreats. Not because you don't care, but because caring threatens the walls that once kept you safe. The shadow whispers, "Detach first. Leave before they do. Don't hope. You'll only hurt later. Don't open your heart. You'll lose control." And then, in tiny moments that seem meaningless at the time, you begin to destroy what you actually want to keep. You respond coldly when you should have been soft. You withdraw when you should have been honest. You choose pride over connection. You assume bad intentions where there were none. You create distance where there should have been presence. At the time, it feels justified. Your ego invents reasons to defend the behavior. You tell yourself you're protecting your boundaries. You tell yourself you're avoiding disappointment. You tell yourself you're simply not in the mood. But the unconscious knows. It knows you are acting from fear, not truth. And only after the person is gone, only when their absence becomes heavier than their presence ever felt, does the truth finally emerge. You didn't lose them suddenly. You pushed them away slowly, moment by moment, fear by fear, shadow by shadow. This is why people only respect what they lose. Not because they are inherently ungrateful, but because the shadow blinds them until it's too late. Jung said the shadow does not only contain your darkness, it also contains your hidden potential for love, intimacy, and connection. The parts of you capable of depth sit locked behind the gates of your oldest wounds. If you ignore the shadow, you ignore your ability to appreciate what you have while you still have it. Loss becomes the mirror. It shows you the version of yourself you couldn't see. It exposes the small cruelties you justified, the warmth you withheld, the conversations you avoided, the apologies you never made. Look closely and you'll see something painful. You weren't just afraid of losing them, you were afraid of being fully seen by them. because respect, gratitude, presence, love, these are terrifying responsibilities. They demand vulnerability. They demand courage. They demand that you confront the parts of you that believe you are unworthy. Most people never do that, so they let the shadow steer their choices. And only when everything collapses do they finally understand. They didn't lose something precious. They failed to recognize it while it was still within reach. There is a moment, small, devastating, irreversible, when someone's absence becomes louder than their presence ever was. A moment when the world goes quiet and the silence tells the truth you refused to hear while they were still here. Jung believed that we never relate to people as they truly are. We relate to the image we build of them, the inner figure shaped by memory, projection, and need. And as long as they exist beside us, that image stays blurred by familiarity. Presence softens perception. Absence sharpens it. When someone is alive and woven into your daily routine, you think you know them because you recognize the sound of their steps, the way they say your name, the rhythm of their habits. But recognition is not understanding. Familiarity is not awareness. Proximity is not presence. The mind lies to you in the gentlest way possible. It convinces you that because someone is here, you have time. Time to speak, time to see, time to appreciate, time to show up more fully later. But later is the most dangerous illusion you will ever believe in. Only when they are gone, when the chair stays empty, when the room feels colder, when their voice no longer threads through your daily life, does the image finally come into focus. You see the details with a clarity that feels like punishment, the patience you dismissed, the small acts of care you overlooked, the presence you treated as background noise. The stability you didn't recognize was stability. Absence becomes a sculptor, carving the truth out of the stone of your denial. This is why grief feels like revelation. Why heartbreak feels like judgment. Why regret feels like waking up in a body that's no longer your own. Jung believed that absence forces the unconscious into consciousness. It drags what was hidden into the light. It turns the unnoticed into the unforgettable. It transforms the ordinary into the holy. Think of someone you wish you could speak to one more time. A single conversation. A single honest sentence. A single chance to say what you swallowed down out of pride, fear, or distraction, but you can't. And the impossibility is what awakens you. You didn't respect their presence because it felt permanent. You didn't value their care because it felt guaranteed. You didn't see their worth because you assumed there would always be another moment to notice it. Life then does what life always does. It reminds you that nothing is guaranteed. The people you love have an invisible expiration date. The moments you live through cannot be repeated. The chapters you rush through cannot be rewritten. The time you take for granted is quietly running out behind your back. Jung said the psyche protects itself by dulling meaning. If you felt the full weight of your blessings, you'd live in constant awe and constant fear. So your mind softens the truth. It makes beauty bearable. It makes love manageable. It makes presence ordinary. But absence strips you of this protection. It forces you to feel the exact depth you avoided. And once you feel it, nothing looks the same. You begin replaying memories you ignored. You begin craving moments you once rushed through. You begin respecting the smallest gestures, the ones that once blended into the background. The truth hits you. You never lost someone suddenly. You lost them slowly, through every moment you failed to truly see them. Absence doesn't just reveal what you had. It reveals who you were while you had it. And sometimes, that revelation is more painful than the loss itself. There are losses that don't leave funerals behind. No goodbye texts. No last arguments. No dramatic exits. Just a slow, quiet fading. The loss of time. The loss of potential. The loss of the person you were supposed to become. Jung believed these are the deepest wounds a person carries. Not the wounds inflicted by others, but the wounds inflicted by your own neglect, because you don't realize you're wasting your life. While you're wasting it, you don't respect your youth when you still feel immortal. You don't value your strength when your body still obeys you. You don't cherish your potential when possibility still feels infinite. You don't fear lost time because you assume there will always be more. Life does not steal these things suddenly. It takes them grain by grain, as quietly as dust settling in a room you no longer notice. It starts with one day where you tell yourself you're too tired. Then a week where nothing changes. Then a month where everything feels fine. Then a year where you barely recognize yourself. And one morning, or in the middle of the night, when the world is silent enough for truth to find you, you feel something cold rising inside you. You missed it. You missed the version of yourself who once felt brave. You missed the younger self who believed things were still possible. You missed the window that was open for years because you kept telling yourself you would climb through it someday. Jung believed the unconscious keeps a perfect record of every abandoned possibility, every dream you postponed, every talent you refused to develop, every promise you whispered to yourself but never honored. These lost versions of you don't die. They linger in the shadow, not to haunt you, but to warn you. They whisper, you will respect your time only after you've wasted it. You will respect your energy only after you've drained it. You will respect your ambition only after you've silenced it. You will respect your purpose only after you've forgotten it. And the worst part? You always knew this. You just didn't want to admit it. Think about the dreams you once had, the ones that made you excited, the ones you told people about with fire in your chest. Now look at how you talk about those dreams today. Do you mention them with a laugh? Do you call them unrealistic? Do you hide how much they still ache? That laughter is not acceptance. It's self-defense, because if you admitted how deeply those dreams still matter, you'd also have to admit how much time you've let slip through your fingers. Jung said that people don't wake up until they collide with something irreversible. A truth they cannot bargain with, a moment they cannot undo, a realization sharp enough to cut through the numbness they've lived in. For some, it's the loss of a decade. For others, it's an opportunity that will never come back. For others, still, it's the sudden awareness that they have grown older without growing deeper. And in that moment, something cracks inside you. Not out of despair, but out of recognition. You finally see how many times you betrayed your future self. You finally see how often you chose comfort over progress. You finally see how much life you postponed for a version of you that never arrived. Time is the one thing people disrespect the most, and yet time is the one thing they can never get back. You only learn its value when it's too late, when you feel it slipping. When options shrink, when the road behind you is longer than the road ahead. Jung warned that the psyche will do anything to avoid self-confrontation. It will distract you, numb you, protect you from the weight of your own wasted potential. Until one day, the protection collapses, and all that's left is truth. A truth most people meet with regret, because losing time is not like losing a person. You can't call it, you can't apologize to it. You can't promise to do better next time. When time is gone, you don't just lose the moment, you lose the version of yourself who could have lived it. And only then, with painful clarity, do you finally respect what you once held carelessly in your hands. There is a truth Jung understood about human beings that most people never admit. We don't just fail to respect what we have. We fear valuing it at all. Because to value something deeply is to accept the responsibility of protecting it. And responsibility terrifies the modern psyche. If you admit someone matters to you, you must show up for them. You must listen. You must be honest. You must risk disappointment. You must risk being seen. If you admit your dreams matter, you cannot keep hiding behind excuses. You cannot blame circumstances forever. You cannot retreat into distraction. You must pursue something that might expose your limits. If you admit your time matters, you can't waste it anymore. You can't stay comfortable. You can't drown your hours in meaningless escape. Value demands presence. Value demands discipline. Value demands depth. And depth is frightening. So instead, people choose the easier path. They take what matters for granted. Not because they don't care, but because caring would force them to grow. Jung believed people avoid meaning because meaning requires transformation, and transformation requires confrontation with the shadow. The shadow isn't just your darkness. It's the part of you that knows you are not living up to who you could be. It's the part of you that knows you have been half awake. It's the part of you that knows you're avoiding the weight of your own potential. To value something, truly value it, is to say, this deserves my strength. And most people do not trust themselves to offer strength consistently. So they take the safer route. They minimize, they detach. They avoid difficult conversations. They suppress real emotion. They pretend nothing matters too much because if it does, they might have to change. Think of how many relationships crumble, not because people stop caring, but because caring would require effort. Effort they don't feel prepared to give. Think of how many dreams die, not because they were impossible, but because pursuing them would require a level of discipline people have never practiced. Think of how much time people waste, not because they're unaware, but because wasting time is easier than facing the truth that their life is slipping by. A person who values their blessings must confront their inadequacies. And most people would rather lose something quietly than admit they were too passive, too fearful, or too distracted to protect it. This is the hidden reason people only respect what they lose. Loss forces you to confront the responsibility you avoided when you still had the chance. When a relationship ends, you suddenly see the conversations you avoided, the affection you withheld, the honesty you were too afraid to offer, the presence you never gave fully. When a dream fades, you suddenly see the hours you wasted, the excuses you repeated, the days you told yourself not today, the potential you never disciplined yourself to develop. When time disappears, you suddenly see how casually you traded your life away, how many evenings you numbed yourself, how many opportunities you walked past, how many years you lived unconsciously. People say they fear loss, but Jung would say they fear value even more, because value requires vulnerability. Value requires strength. Value requires self-respect, and self-respect forces you to look at who you've been and who you haven't. So instead, people dilute their attachments, soften their hopes, treat everything like it's temporary, and pretend nothing really matters. It's easier to live carelessly than to rise to the weight of meaning. But the bill always comes. Loss delivers the depth people were too afraid to feel earlier. Loss forces the self-confrontation they avoided. Loss makes them realize what they were capable of and what they refused to become. This is why people respect what they lose, because losing it finally makes them become the person they should have been while it was still here. Not because the thing changed, but because they did. Because loss pulled them out of the shallow end of life and forced them to experience the truth without anesthesia. The truth they were running from. Meaning is frightening. Responsibility is frightening. Depth is frightening. But the cost of avoiding them is far more terrifying. In the end, Jung's message is not a warning. It is a mirror. A mirror held up to the part of you that still believes life will wait for you, that people will wait, that time will wait, that your potential will wait. But nothing waits. The people you love are walking through their own timelines. Your opportunities have windows that quietly close. Your youth dissolves one unnoticed day at a time. And the version of you that could have changed everything won't exist forever. The tragedy of life is not that you lose things. You were always going to lose. Everything is temporary. Everyone is mortal. Every chapter has a final line. The tragedy is that you only wake up after the loss, when the door has closed, when the moment has passed, when the silence becomes louder than the presence you ignored. Respect is not born from having something. Respect is born from awareness, from understanding the fragility of every heartbeat, every conversation, every opportunity, every version of yourself. Loss forces the unconscious into the light. It strips away illusion. It pulls you out of the numbness you mistook for peace. It makes you feel the depth you ran from. But once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. You begin living differently, more awake, more honest, more present. And if this video cracked something open in you, if it reminded you of what you can no longer afford to sleep through, then subscribe, not for the algorithm, but because you're ready for truths most people only confront when it's already too late.